let's get right into it. India is undertaking a massive overhaul of its entire tax system. We're talking about GST 2.0, a move that's being hailed as breaking the shackles off the world's fifth largest economy. So what does this actually mean for businesses? And more importantly, for the money in your wallet? Let's break it all down.
And that's not just some buzzword. When the government announced this long-awaited reform, they used some seriously powerful language, declaring that the shackles of the Indian economy have been opened. I mean, that one phrase alone tells you just how big of a deal this is supposed to be. Now, you know how things are in a globally connected world. So the finance minister was super quick to get ahead of any potential confusion. They even made a bit of a joke, clarifying that no, this has nothing to do with international trade pressures or tariffs. This is a homegrown, long overdue domestic strategy. Okay, so let's dive right in. What exactly were these so-called shackles that the economy needed to break free from? What was the problem this whole reform was designed to solve? Simply put, the old GST system was, well, it was a tangled web. You had all these different tax slabs, which created a ton of confusion for us, when we're at the checkout counter. And for businesses, it was a massive headache just trying to navigate it all. So the new solution, its whole goal is radical simplicity. And here you can see the absolute core of that new simplicity. Those four old tax rates, 5, 12, 18, and 28%, gone. They're being collapsed into just two main slabs. You've got a 5% rate for essential items and an 18% rate for pretty much everything else. Super straightforward. Of course, there's always an exception, right? A special, much higher rate of 40% is being set aside for what are often called sin goods, so think tobacco products and also some other specific high-end luxury items. All right, let's move on to the part I'm sure you're all waiting for. The big question, what does all of this actually mean for your wallet and your shopping list? And check this out, the timing couldn't be better, right around the Diwali festival season. A whole bunch of popular items are about to get cheaper. We're talking a tax rate drop from a hefty 28% all the way down to 18%. This includes things like smaller cars, motorcycles, bigger TVs, and even home appliances like ACs. That's going to make some of those big ticket purchases a lot more affordable. But hey, it's not just about the big stuff. These price drops are also hitting everyday essentials. We're talking household goods like soap and toothpaste, crucial supplies for farmers, and get this, even school supplies are seeing major tax cuts, with some of them becoming completely tax-free. That's a huge deal for families. Okay, but on the flip side, it's not all price drops. Some things are going to get more expensive. This is mostly focused on those sin and luxury categories we talked about earlier. So think aerated soft drinks, bigger cars and motorcycles, tobacco products, and high-end stuff like business class flights. All right, so we've talked about what this means for us as consumers, but this reform goes way deeper than that. It's also designed to fundamentally change and simplify how businesses operate all across the country. Okay, so one of the biggest problems with the old system was something with a really technical-sounding name, the inverted duty structure. I know, it sounds complicated, but stick with me. It was a very real, very frustrating problem for manufacturers that basically trapped their cash. Let's walk through a simple example to see what I mean. Imagine you own a t-shirt factory. Under the old system, you might pay a high 18% tax on the raw fiber you buy. But here's the catch. When you sell the final t-shirt, you can only collect a 5% tax. See the problem? You paid out way more in taxes than you collected, and your money just gets stuck in this bureaucratic limbo, waiting for a refund from the government. The new reform fixes this whole mess by aligning the tax rates. So you see, this is way more than just fixing one little tax loophole. It's a full-on process overhaul. The reforms are also bringing in things like automatic registrations, they're promising much faster refunds to free up that cash flow we just talked about, and they're aiming to simplify the rules to cut down on all those legal headaches for businesses. Okay, so let's zoom out for a second. We've got consumers potentially spending more and businesses operating way more efficiently. What does this all mean for the big picture, for the Indian economy as a whole? Well, the projections are pretty staggering. Experts believe that all this, unlocking consumer spending, making business easier, could add a full 2 to 3% to India's GDP growth rate. I mean, for an economy that's already growing fast, that kind of boost is like pouring fuel on the fire. But as with any change this massive, not everyone is popping the champagne. There's bound to be some pushback, and a number of state governments are raising some really serious concerns about their own budgets. You see, several states,
especially the ones that rely more on consumption taxes rather than manufacturing, are getting worried. Their fear is that lowering the overall tax rates is going to blow a huge hole in their revenue. So they're protesting these changes and demanding financial compensation from the central government. Okay, so finally, let's put this whole reform into its broader context and take a look at what might be coming down the road. And this brings us right back to that global picture we mentioned at the start. So while the finance minister made it very clear this is a domestic reform, you can't deny the timing is pretty great. By boosting internal demand and business activity, it's actually acting like a powerful cushion, helping to soften the blow from some of those negative global trade pressures. So there's no doubt this reform is a huge step towards untangling India's incredibly complex tax system. But there's always talk of other big pending changes, things like land and labor laws. And that leaves us with a really interesting forward-looking question. Now that this major shackle has been broken, which one is next?